Shalom, and welcome to another lesson in the series, The People of Israel, Striving for Leadership. Today we will study chapter 17, the book of Judges, Sefer Shoftim, Perek Yud Zayin. Actually, we have already finished with all the judges. Shimshon, Samson, was the final judge. The story of the judges, we see story after story, how the lack of one united leader leaves its impact. Here we begin the final 6 chapters of the book of Judges, which deal with situations which rise from the fact that there's no leadership. These are several stories. Some of them are connected to each other, some of them are not. But to show quite clear how the whole atmosphere is abnormal. In this chapter we have 2 stories which seem like they don't have anything to do with each other, though they take place in the same place. In next chapter we will see how they are both actually a background story to the main story as described in chapter 18. But today we will deal with the 2 stories that appear in chapter 17. And chapter 17 begins with a man from the Mount Ephraim, whose name is Michayu. Vahi ish mihar Ephraim ushmo Michayu. Vayomer li'imo, 1,100 hakesef asher lukach lach, ve'at alit, v'gam amart be'oznai hinei hakesef iti ani lekachtiv. V'tomer imo baruch b'ni l'Adonai. He says to his mother, the 1,100 pieces of silver that you claim that were taken from you, and you cursed whoever stole it. And you even said that in my ears. Here, the money is with me. I took it. His mother says to him, Baruch b'ni l'Adonai, blessed my son to Hashem. Very weird story. He tells his mother, you know, you're looking for that 1,100 pieces of silver. I took them. You claim somebody stole them. We would think, wow, the person, the child, suddenly his conscience is not calm and he wants to give back the money. And then we see that he says why he's giving back the money. He says, I'm giving it back to you. He said, the money you claim that was taken from you, and you cursed whoever stole it. Here it is. If we follow that, when he says, I'm going to give it back to you, she says to him, bless my son to Hashem. What do you mean? Your son just told you that he stole the money and you say he's blessed to Hashem? And here we see how concept of values is totally corrupt. He gives back the money because his mother cursed him, not because he thinks there's anything wrong with the fact that he's stealing. She, who's so shocked that he was the one who stole the money, she blesses him. I mean, they're so really afraid of the curse. And they're not afraid of the stealing. And the story goes on. He returns the money. Vayashev et 1,100 hakesef le'imo. Vatomer imo, hakdesh hikdashti et hakesef l'Adonai. His mother says to him, I have sanctified the money to Hashem. Wow, we say, wow, she sanctified the money to Hashem. La'asot pesel u'masicha. In order to make a statue, an image of Hashem. Once again, to Hashem, to make an idol. What's going on here? Something here is wrong. So he says to her, now I will give it back to you. He gives it back to his mother, and his mother takes 200 of the pieces, and she gives it to him, to a silversmith, and he makes it into a carved image and an idol. And Micha, the man himself, Micha had his house of idolatry. He made an ephod, an icon, and he installed one of his sons to be his priest. He takes the money, or she takes the money, she gives it to her silversmith, he makes an idol out of it. And Micha, his house, is a house of idol worshiping. He takes his son and he appoints him as a priest. And here is the end of the first story, where the verse concludes with a very major verse. Bayamim hahem ein melech b'Yisrael, ish hayashar be'inav yaseh. Every single person does whatever he is pleased with. There is no king. The lack of leadership. Problem here is not with Micha. The problem here is not with his mother. Both of them have good intentions. The problem here is the situation. The lack of any leadership. The lack of any guidance. He steals the money, doesn't see any problem with that. He gives it back because his mother cursed him, his mother blesses him. She takes the money, she promised the money, she's going to use it for God's sake. What was for God's sake? To build an idol. An idol! The very, very beginning of the 10 Commandments. Even that, basic knowledge, basic understanding, what is in favor in the eyes of God and what is not, even that is lacking. Interesting. She said, we speak about 1,100 pieces of silver, and she gives 200. What's the 1,100, 200? What do these numbers go back? Actually, the number 1,100 was once mentioned not long ago in the story of Samson, where in the previous chapter, where the people, the Philistines, when they talk to Delilah, the wife of Shimshon, they say to her, please try to find out what is the secret of Shimshon's strength. They say to her, each of us will give you 1,100 pieces of silver. What's the 1,100 pieces? Why not 1,000? What's the 1,100? It's quite obvious that in the story of Shimshon, the Philistines understand that the power of Shimshon is not something natural. It's not that they can come with 100 of them and beat him up. He already managed to beat 1,000 of them with the jaw of a donkey. So what is the story? They understand the story is something beyond. They need something supernatural. They need something which is to overcome Shimshon's godly powers. And they use 1,100. What's 1,100? It's 1,100. Two numbers that are like both comprehensive numbers. She here the same thing, 1,100. When she gives it back, she gives to make the carve the idol. She gives back 200. What's 200? 100 and 100. The number 100 means something great, something strong. So 1,100 is something twice complete, twice total. She thinks that maybe this will be something to God. And now we get to the second story in this chapter. Vahinar mi Beit Lechem Yehudah mi Mishpachat Yehudah vehu Levi. There's a lad from Beit Lechem of Judah, the family of Judah, and he was a Levite. Is he from the family of Judah, or is he a Levite? Maybe his mother's from the family of Judah, maybe his father's a Levite, we don't know. Vayelech ha'ish me'a'ir mi Beit Lechem Yehudah lagur ba'asher yimtza. He leaves the city of Beit Lechem to live wherever he finds it suitable, and he comes, and here he bumps into Har Ephraim, the Mount of Ephraim. And where does he land? In the house of Micha. He is a Levite. The Levites were given, in the book of Joshua, 48 cities to live there. But apparently this Levite has no place to live. Even the commitment to those who are supposed to serve in the name of God can't find themselves here. Every single verse in this chapter is calling out the situation needs leadership. Where does this gentleman come? This Levite, he comes from Judea. If we recall, the very beginning of the book of Judges begins with the fact that Judah was supposed to lead the people of Israel. The very first verse in the book of Judges says, the people will go to God and say, who will lead us? Who will go up for us first against the Canaanite? And Hashem says, Yehudah will go up. What happens to Judah? He's gone. The Levite coming from Judah, once again hinting to us that Judah is not playing their mission, or not serving what they should be doing. And this Levite comes to Micha, and Micha says to him, where are you from? He says, I'm from Bethlehem, Yehudah. Please stay here. Stay with me, and you will be for me a mentor, a pastor, and a priest. And I will give you 10 pieces of silver per year. Here we can see what the number 1,100 pieces. If 10 pieces of silver with clothing and food was enough for this Levite, so we know what a great number was, 1,100. And the Levite agrees to live with Micha, and he becomes to him like one of his sons. And Micha installed the Levite, and the lad becomes a priest, and he stayed in Micha's house. Vayomer Micha, Ata yadati ki etiv Adonai li ki haya li halevi lekohen. And Micha says, and here we listen to this verse, I would say we fall to the floor. Now I know that Hashem will be good to me since this Levite has become my priest. Micha has good intentions. The Levite has good intentions. The mother of Micha has good intentions. But the situation is so calling out what the verse in the center of this chapter says. Bayamim hahem ein melech. In these days, there was no king in Israel, and the man could do whatever he was pleased. Total anarchy. Not only anarchy, but total lack of values. A total misorder in what things should be like. And this whole book of Judges will lead us afterwards to the book of Samuel, where we see suddenly starting to develop some kind of leadership. But here we see the whole book of Judges, and this story here, as we see over here, which is a background, the beginning, the exposition for the next story we see in the next chapter, calls that from every single verse. The people of Israel are lacking leadership. Shalom.